Mr. President, the last point I would like to make relates to a motion that was made this morning by the Majority Leader. It was related to the appropriation bill for the Department of Homeland Security. Why are we bringing up this appropriation bill at this moment? Because when we agreed last December to fund our government, the Republicans in the House insisted that we carve out the Department of Homeland Security and not give it its regular budget. Instead, give it emergency spending, a continuing resolution. This is not the way to run any department of government, certainly not the Department of Homeland Security. Why is it important to fund this department? You need only look to what's happened in the last few days in Paris to understand that the threat of terrorism to the world is still very real. One of our first lines of defense when it comes to terrorism is our Department of Homeland Security. There is no excuse for us to be dealing with this continuing resolution to fund this department. They should have the resources they need to keep America safe. But instead, what has happened is this. The House of Representatives last week said, we will only agree to fund this department properly if we can provide certain riders and changes in the law as part of it. I would tell you that the change that has been proposed by the House of Representatives is unacceptable. The President has said he's going to veto it if it's sent to his desk, and I totally support his position. Because here's what they have come up with in the House of Representatives. If you're familiar with the DREAM Act, which I introduced in Congress 14 years ago, it says if a young person is brought to the United States at an early age, parents making the decision to come to this country, and that young person grows up in the United States, finishes high school, no serious criminal problems, willing to go forward to higher education or to the military, we'll give them a chance of becoming legal in America. That's the DREAM Act. It's been considered and passed on the floor of the Senate, considered and passed on the floor of the House, but never in the same session, and so it's not the law of the land. President Obama, a little over 2 years ago, came out with a program, an executive order program known as DACA. DACA said to these young people who would qualify under this law, if you'll come forward and register with our government, if you will pay the filing fee, if you'll allow us to do the background check, we'll allow you to stay, go to school, and work in America and not be deported. 600,000 young people have come forward. We estimate there's some 2 million eligible. 600,000 have come forward, 30,000 in my state of Illinois. Who are these young people? Let me introduce you to one of them, Oscar Vazquez. Oscar Vazquez grew up in Phoenix, Arizona. His mother and father brought him to that city from Mexico, and he was undocumented. He attended Carl Hayden High School in Phoenix. He was a member of the junior ROTC. His goal was to serve in the United States Army. When he went to the recruiter to sign up, the recruiter said, I need your birth certificate. And Oscar said, come on, we're fighting a war. Can't you look the other way and just let me join? He said, no, young man, you don't have the proper documents. You can't enlist in the United States Army. Well, he was despondent because that was his goal. He went home and he got engaged in another project, which is the subject of a new movie called Spare Parts, which George Lopez has produced and directed and starred in, that I saw last week. I won't give away the whole story, but I can tell you this, Oscar Vazquez and 3 other students at Carl Hayden High School entered into an underwater robotics competition. They competed with colleges like MIT, and they won. Their high school team won the underwater robotics competition. Talented young man, Oscar said, I'm going to Arizona State University without any government assistance, graduated with a degree in mechanical engineering. And after he got his degree, he had a wife and a baby, and he said, now I've got to get right with America. I've got to resolve this issue of being undocumented. That means Oscar decided to move back to Mexico. He was living in Mexico. The law required him to stay there for 10 years. That's how the law is written. Petitioning the United States for a chance to come back in. Eventually, he was given a waiver. He came back to the United States, and I'll tell you what he did. Oscar Vazquez came back, became a citizen of the United States of America, and the first thing he did was enlist in the United States Army. He went into combat in Afghanistan and came home after having served our nation honorably, and now is working for a major railroad in the state of Montana with his wife and children. That's the story of one dreamer who, given a chance, has made a difference in America. He not only served in our military, but he had a degree in mechanical engineering. He is going to be a job creator, a job builder himself. So what do the House Republicans want to do to people like Oscar Vazquez? Deport them. Deport them. Mr. President, that's exactly what they called for. They're dream killers, and that isn't right. We ought to give Oscar, young men and women just like him, the chance to succeed and the chance to make America better. Well, Mr. President, I've stood on this floor over 50 times with color photographs like this one by my side and told the stories of dreamers. This last weekend, I was in Chicago, and 6 of them came forward and told their stories, each and every one of them a compelling reason for us to defeat this mean-spirited amendment that came out of the House of Representatives. The President will veto it if it gets to his desk, but I hope that we will do better in the Senate. I hope that there are enough senators on both sides of the aisle, 60 plus, who will stand up for the dreamers of America. This is a test. It's a test as to whether or not we believe in fairness and justice and the value that immigrants like Oscar Vazquez bring to the future of America. The House of Representatives just doesn't see it. They are blinded by their hatred for these immigrants, and they continue to pass these mean-spirited amendments. We can do better. We must do better as a nation. Let us stand up for the dreamers, and let us all be dedicated to passing comprehensive immigration reform. Our immigration laws are broken, our system is broken, and it's time for us to accept our responsibility and repair it. We passed a bill a year and a half ago on the floor of the Senate. 68, 14 Republicans and the Democrats voted, sent it over to the House of Representatives, and it languished for a year and a half. They refused to even call it or consider it. Well, our immigration system's still broken. Withholding money from the Department of Homeland Security, threatening with these riders that are dream killers for so many young people in America, that's unacceptable. I will stand on this floor as long as it takes to defend this DREAM Act and people like Oscar Vazquez, who contributed to America and make it a better nation. I hope that we will have a bipartisan support for defeating the House of Representatives riders that have been branded by the President as unacceptable, and he will veto. Mr. President, I yield the floor.